Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for our second to last Eloqua user group for 2023. We're delighted to have Stephen Streich with us from Oracle. So we'll introduce Stephen here in just a few moments, but let's walk through the presentation and agenda, and we'll get started. So what are we looking at? So a little bit of welcome and housekeeping, usual routine. For those of us that join regularly, you'll know we follow the same concept pretty much every month. Q&A, while positioned there at the end, is really open throughout. So just keep an eye on the Q&A with Zoom, and we'll go ahead and answer those potentially as we run through. If not, we'll certainly save them to the end as well. What we will do, though, is we'll kick off with an introduction to Steve, who you can see there at the top of the screen. He'll help us get a bit of a feel for what happened at the Oracle Cloud World event in Las Vegas last month, and also include a little bit of roadmap information for us around Eloqua. In relation to the release 23D for Eloqua, which is due next month, we don't have a lot of information yet, but we will as of late next week. So we can give you dates, I think, at this point. But let's kick off and do a little bit of housekeeping, as is actually, first of all, the team. So welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us. It is now, is it Thanksgiving Day in Canada today? Is that right?
It is actually, yes.
Okay.
It's towards the end. It's 8 p.m.
8 p.m. your time.
Canadian Thanksgiving, which is not quite as large a holiday as U.S. Thanksgiving, but still celebrated.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, look, we really appreciate you making some time to join us. Thank you so much. And also on the line is Adrian Jones, our CEO and founder, also Sean Camello, one of our account directors, and myself, Derek Bell. I'm your host for today's session, which is going to follow a little bit of a different format than we normally do. It's probably a little bit more of a discussion following Steve's presentation, really to give you an opportunity as Eloqua customers to ask some questions. It's not often we get to have someone with I'm not sure how many letters there are in your title, but you kind of beat the university professors that I've seen, Stephen. It's huge, so it's good. Thanks so much for joining again.
Well, Oracle's a big corporate beast, so we have long names for things.
Fantastic. So our clients and friends will know we use Zoom to host the webinar, so that's the same for today. Replays will be available on our blog a little bit into the future. I'll explain why that might be delayed this month, but Q&A, as we said, so keep in mind Q&A is visible to everybody. So if you see a question that somebody else has asked, go ahead and upvote that yourself, and you can we'll work on that. Then if you did want to ask a specific question or a private question, you can use the chat function as well and direct that to any one of us. All right. So on that note, I thought kind of a fun way to perhaps introduce you, Steve, to the team was to ask you a little bit about, what happens in Vegas. Does it necessarily stay in Vegas? And I suppose when it comes to enhancements to the product, we hope it doesn't stay in Vegas, that it in fact does get rolled out. But how many times would you say you've been to Vegas for events like this in your career?
Oh, quite a few. I know exactly where this picture was taken from, and I've walked that bridge many times.
Right. And so on that note, where was it this year? The event was held
It was in the
place?
Venetian, which is where this picture is from, and this is actually indoors, and that's a fake sky that's painted on the ceiling and has the lights actually change during the day to give it the semblance of the sun rising and setting. It's all very interesting. The went to Vegas was for a supply chain conference because I used to work in supply chain planning from a product perspective, and that was in 2001 or 2002. So wow. I've been going for about 20 years, and I've been at the Venetian many times. It's unfortunately, you don't often get to leave the premises of the place where you are, but it's always.
Well, you get the illusion of leaving, I suppose.
Yeah, here it's not so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, what sort of numbers did we see this year at Cloud World? How many people would have been attending?
I believe it was around 18,000, which was up from last year. And then we also. At the same time, kind of like co-conferences was the health conference, which was the Cerner event. So if the people on the call may or may not be aware, Oracle made a major acquisition of one of the largest healthcare records companies in the world called Cerner. And
Uh-huh.
so we were running those conferences alongside each other. So that made it even bigger.
And then I believe NetSuite is coming up. There's an Oracle NetSuite
NetSuite World
conference.
is coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
then what about music acts? All these IT shows in the US seem to have strong
Yeah,
performers.
this was an interesting one because rather than going for one kind of headlining band, it was a composite of people who I can't remember all the different bands they came from because full disclosure, I missed it that night because I was hosting a customer dinner.
Right.
But it was like one of these super acts or super bands where they take people from that have been in famous bands in the past, whether it was like a popular lead guitarist or a vocalist or so forth, and they kind of composite them together and play all kinds of hits from
Oh, right. Cool. And then what about the Marquee Awards dinner? So we understand this year there was a dinner or a formal dinner with the awards ceremony for the annual Marquee Awards. Did you get a
Yes.
chance to attend that?
I stopped by, but again, I had other duties. I had a customer and analyst dinner that was in a restaurant only about a 5-minute walk from where this picture is. And so I was hosting a number of analysts from Gartner and Forrester and some customers, but there was a half an hour overlap. So I went by and said hello to some of the marquee winners and then went off to my hosting duties. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Perfect. So were you aware of any of the winners in any sort of level of detail at all in relation to how they won? I'm kind of throwing that at you now.
So they
So
no, well, so they do it. This has changed, and just in the last year. So, I mean, I've so I started with Eloqua in 2007, and we were acquired by Oracle, and it closed in 2013, and so I've been involved in the marquees since inception, and every year slightly did it a little bit differently. But this year, they took all the different categories and the judges, of which I was one, didn't judge everybody in a category. You only got 2 or 3 submissions from different categories, so you never saw the whole category, and they randomized. So I did read and vote on some of the winning submissions, but there were some categories where I simply didn't have access to the submission. So the company that won, I never saw the submission, but I would
oh,
have.
okay.
Presumably, there's a statistical or survey kind of methodology behind that. But
Right. Yeah, no, it's we've done a few submissions and been lucky enough to have some of our clients win over the years. And
absolutely,
there's a good amount of work that goes into that process. And if you had to give people, say, just one primary tip for looking ahead for next year for the Marquee Awards and their submission, what would kind of be that one tip that you would want to give them?
yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to first of all, some quantitative metrics matter because the reviewers are often looking at dozens of submissions. So persuasive writing is important. Shouldn't be, if it's too long, people are busy. They may not give it the full attention. So try to be, concise and persuasive and give it a personality because people like a story and people resonate with a story. But you need to have some quantitative metrics in there too, because in terms of the dimensions, there's how well does it fit the category, but also how well did it like demonstrate success. So I think some of the great submissions like from Lifeblood and for example and others and the lead management category was really tough. I believe University of Tasmania was in that one. And they all have it's like, okay, well, it's both compelling as well as they've showcased specific results. So it becomes very difficult, and usually sometimes people just edge each other out. So it's a combination of storytelling plus the quantitative results.
Because that Lifeblood you mentioned, who are a winner, that was Red Cross Australia, and
Yes.
one of their brands of campaigns called Lifeblood that won one of the categories. So that was great news for Australia to be well represented this year. All righty, well, let's jump ahead, and this is now where we might jump over, and Steve's going to share some slides that he's got just to kind of help us cover off a few points, and that'll probably take us through that Eloqua roadmap section as well. So what we'll do now is we'll hand over to you, Steve. I'll stop sharing, and what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on the Q&A, while you're presenting, and
All
we
right.
may interrupt you a little bit depending on the volume of questions that
Yeah,
we
no
get, if
problem.
that's all
And
right.
feel free to jump in at any point in time. But yeah, so I'm going to go through. Obviously, you have to put up a safe harbor statement because there are some forward-looking things here. It is a bit of a roadmap, but I did three separate presentations, in front of fairly well-represented audiences. So this is a bit of an amalgamation of some of the talks that I gave from a content perspective. I think a lot of the content is available online. We could probably find that link and share to the audience later. But so I don't want to give it like sort of a dry presentation because I'm not in front of a live audience. So please jump in with any questions. I just wanted to give a sense of thematically what we were talking about from a marketing perspective, where we're investing with a particular slant towards Eloqua, given the audience. But we are making major investments across the marketing suite. And one of the big themes, I guess there were some, significant overall themes for the event in and of itself, but one of the big themes was really sort of unification of the front office and the fact that marketing, it's not just about lead acquisition and lead generation or conversion. It's about the entire customer lifecycle. And one of the things that's really driving that for us is the fact that more so than ever, or increasingly so, or perhaps you could say, is that customers have a ton of choice. And when I say customers here, I'm talking about both from a consumer perspective as well as from a B2B perspective. As somebody with a problem in an organization that needs to be solved and researched and de-risked and whatnot, or as a consumer that has to make a decision. We have a lot of choices with how we can engage with a brand. We are often doing our own research, significantly so, and in many cases, not even directly engaging a company or a brand in making the decision. Obviously, when it gets into large scale B2B purchases, you ultimately tend to have conversations. You're not going to drop a couple $1 million on, say, some major infrastructure without ever talking to anybody. But you're still educating yourself on solutions and options and brands and vendors and reputation. And you're doing that generally online through through your peer groups, through recommendations, through analysts, and so forth. So that amount of choice and privacy that consumers expect while also being educated is a very critical trend for us to be aware of. And then on the business side, on the brand side, or on our customers, the customers of Oracle's side, they need to be more agile than ever before to respond to changes in consumer behavior, respond to market shifts, to be able to try new things, try new strategies, shift to different channels, see what's working, what isn't working, do more at scale. This expectation of having truly contextually relevant, personalized experiences puts a lot of onus on the marketer to try new things, which they often don't have the capacity to do because they're so busy rinsing and repeating sort of the same things all the time just to get stuff out the door. But you also want to speak, you want to be speaking to the consumer or the customer with one voice, meaning that, the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. From a marketing, sales, service perspective, everybody's in alignment. Everybody understands the customer. So it puts a lot of, this puts a lot of weight or a lot of burden on the marketing organization. And I could talk for an hour just on stuff we're doing around that and the trends we're seeing. But I'm going to zero in on one specific area where we're investing a lot, which is sales and marketing kind of unification. And I say unification intentionally. It's not alignment. We've been talking about sales and marketing alignment forever. The reality is we have been talking about this forever, and it's always fallen a little short. And our thesis here is that over the years, with the advent of marketing automation back in the mid 2000s or so, when it started to become more than just evangelistic and started to become more and more adopted, it really pushed marketing teams towards a world that was focused on lead generation, and the MQL became all important. And we sort of lost sight, I think, as to what happens after a lead is qualified, and it became those vanity metrics of measuring how many leads you've sent over to sales. But at the same time, sales teams weren't really focused on selling to, they're focused on selling to accounts and didn't care so much about individual leads. Like, I don't know, why is this a qualified lead? What else is happening at the organization? Maybe applying like BANT type criteria and so forth. So sales teams would often distrust or not believe that in the reality of these leads, or not understand what the next action should be that they're even taking with these leads, and focus to do their own, farming or hunting for accounts from an opportunity kind of perspective. So you got this inflection point between leads and opportunities, which has always been a disconnect between marketing and sales, and has always created sort of a leaky funnel, if you will, because leads that may be very well qualified weren't being followed up on, and leads that where an individual at an organization was seeming to show a lot of intent and interest, there was no real opportunity there. It was single threaded. Maybe somebody was kicking the tires, maybe they were doing research, whatever the case might be. So we've been putting a lot of effort into how do we solve that alignment problem. And a lot of this comes down to sort of really supercharging, investing more in our account-based marketing capabilities to be more focused on cross-sell and upsell into existing accounts or target accounts, and understanding that it's a different kind of marketing and sales motion than it is when you're selling to your existing account base than it is to when you're trying to acquire net new names. And how can we treat those things differently? How do you identify growth opportunities in your existing customer base? How do you find that intent, whether it's third-party intent or it's your own first-party data that you're collecting and measuring and understanding? How do you match consumer profiles to those products so that you can run, target, upsell and cross-sell campaigns to audiences that already know are a good fit and already know are showing some intent for the product or service, and you're not just kind of spraying and praying, so to speak. So that really comes down to these three themes that are kind of driving our roadmap for the next couple of years. One overarching theme is know your customer. Another one is orchestrate best practices, and then evolve. This slide says generative AI because the presentation I took it from specifically was talking about generative AI, but it should probably say just artificial intelligence, machine learning in general, not be so specific on the generative part. And the know your customer part, I mean, Eloqua has always, one of its strengths over the years has been its ability to do very complex segmentation and model a lot that is going on within an account and within a contact. Since the beginning, it's been very contact oriented, less so campaign oriented. The contact has always been at the center. But in the last several years, we've basically accepted, or accept is not the right word. We've decided, I suppose, that there's a lot that goes on in the back office, from purchasing and ERP and even HR and supply chain inventory levels, that is critically important to have that information available to sales, to service, to marketing. There's a lot of third-party information that can be brought to bear to understand things like intent. There's a lot of information on psychographics and firmographics that is not naturally going to live in Eloqua or fit in Eloqua, and it's not the proper home for Eloqua necessarily either. So we put a lot of investment into our customer data platform in general, and just making Eloqua, understanding that our customers have hybrid environments, making Eloqua more extensible and integrated with other third-party CDPs. The things that are listed here are the typical types of information that wouldn't exist on a normal flat contact profile. Stuff like the fact that somebody, an organization has, maybe you sell generators or for like large power outages in industrial buildings. And the generator that's on site at a particular location is 10 years old and it's almost off warranty, and it's had a bunch of service calls recently. And that's a very important information to understand in terms of how you could potentially be targeting that customer for either an extended warranty or a new generator or something like that. And that type of information typically lives more in the back office than in the front office. So how do you bring all these things together? to drive better targeting and better relevance. And that is through a customer data platform. And I don't want to turn this into like a sales pitch for Unity. I think people on the call probably understand what a CDP is these days. But generally speaking, a customer data platform can model the complexity of organizations at a lot greater level of detail than historically Eloqua can. Eloqua has custom data objects, but the CDP like Unity allows you to master any kind of objects and have many-to-many relationships, model things appropriately like households or complex account hierarchies and how different businesses roll into each other, what products and services they own. And if you're an automotive manufacturer, you can have a master object that is just the VIN of all the vehicles you've ever sold and leased and all their details and who owns them and what their service record is, like that kind of stuff. So it's very
Stephen,
that.
sorry to
Yep.
interrupt you there. I think your assumption in relation to everybody knows what a CDP is. I don't know. I'd almost take you up on that one. Only
Yeah, perhaps not.
Yeah, there's been some recent press coverage here in Australia where they're talking just an industry mag, and they're looking at CDPs and from the different companies and kind of what everybody's claiming a CDP is. Then there's confusion that, well, a DMP is a CDP, and then these acronyms start flying left, right, and center. And so it's probably good to get some clarity. And I think maybe those things you've got right there on the screen help qualify.
There's that also could be a long conversation, but I would recommend. So the purpose for these items on the screen is that we believe, in order to be a true customer data platform, you need to be doing all of these things. And a lot of just like account-based marketing or a number of other things that have become very trendy over the years, people start to hitch their they hitch their wagon to a wave. And you get a data management platform that just has third-party audience data and activates it to advertising, and they call themselves a CDP. Or you'll get like a powerful segmentation tool that started maybe as simply doing tag management on a website, and they call themselves a CDP.
Right.
So I feel like you have to have all of these things, and this includes bringing together multiple different identity types, like mobile address IDs and cookies and phone numbers and email addresses, and bringing all that first-party data, wrangling all your first-party data together, and having rules for maturing it or promoting it or merging it into like a unified customer profile while not losing all the details, so that you get a true cross-section from all your different systems. And people have a ton of very useful first-party data, but it's very difficult to bring it together. But then when you do have it together, it's not sufficient to just like be able to report on it. You need to be able to activate it. So you need to now be able to have powerful segmentation and intelligence and kind of data modeling on top of it to find clusters of insights and cohorts and audiences that you can then activate across channels. And when I say across channels, I mean paid, earned, and even owned channels. So personalizing a website as well as sending an email or pushing data out to an advertising platform, all from within this one platform. So there is
thank you for that.
I would encourage people to go to just Google CDP Institute, and David has a website where you can learn all about it.
That is a good recommendation, because it does add some clarity around what we should expect a CDP to do, and not get lost in many acronyms. Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is just like a little repeating thing of Unity, but I already said some of the stuff in answering your question. So in the interest of time, maybe we'll move on.
Sure.
But it's the complex segmentation, and it's also then building that into profiles, not just of an individual, but of an account or whatever you happen to have modeled within the CDP. So that's really important. So again, Eloqua is very strong in and of itself in a number of these areas, and people have been using it kind of like a customer data platform for quite some time, and it may be perfectly sufficient for a lot of customers' needs. But kind of CDP will just kind of get you to that next level. But then the orchestration part becomes critical. So if you have your data house in order, what do you do next? Well, you need to use that information to actually speak with your customers or your prospects. How do you then take that to truly orchestrate contextually relevant experiences? And when I say orchestrate experiences, I don't just mean sending emails to people with a message that you hope resonates. I mean, every time they're interacting with you, make sure that interaction is relevant. So that's a lot of sensing and responding to consumer behavior and not just like pushing stuff out at them. So when they hit the website, and to the extent that it's possible, understand who they are and what you should be saying to them. When you do send them an email, make sure that email is relevant. When they get a triggered response to something, use that as an opportunity to reinforce your products and services and be relevant. That's also very difficult to do if you don't have a strong orchestration engine, but it's also very difficult to do historically if you're not an expert in the marketing automation platform, be that Eloqua or Marketo or Pardot or whatever you will have, because these platforms are extremely powerful, but they do require some education and some learning. Like the campaign canvas in Eloqua is extremely powerful. But sometimes all you want to do is a simple email nurture with 5 pieces of content, or all you want to do is invite somebody to a webinar. And yes, you can have templates, but it's our belief that one of the things, if you have your data house in order and you actually have the appropriate content, one of the things that's holding people back is time and the complexity of systems. So we're trying to, on top of a unified marketing orchestration engine and on top of that better data set, we're trying to make it a lot easier to execute kind of standard marketing tactics by walking people through sort of guided workflows in order to achieve it. And that's where we get into this concept of guided campaigns in Eloqua. So roadmap highlights, and I'll mention guided campaigns. We are rolling out a new user experience across Eloqua. If you haven't seen it yet, it is something that you can opt into. And we've already kind of redone a number of different areas in Eloqua to match up to the Oracle, what we call the Oracle Redwood user experience patterns. And this is a bunch of design patterns that are common across all of Oracle: sales, service, ERP, HCM, marketing. And, it's not really more modern and fresh. We're adding in new functionality or making it easier to access information than it was before in the older experience. Eloqua's been around a long time. If you're a user, you'll know that there's a bunch of areas that are very different from each other, from the different parts of its heritage. We're trying to normalize all that and make it easier for people to learn the application and adopt it. So putting a lot of effort into that over the next several quarters. Guided campaigns is what I just mentioned. It's this kind of prescriptive guided wizard-like flow that creates a proper campaign orchestration in Eloqua, but does it through walking you through each step rather than requiring you to understand how to lay it out on the canvas. The open reporting API gives you direct access to all the data in Eloqua Insight. The bulk API is very complete and powerful, but it gives you very low-level individual pieces of data from like emails or form submits or contacts or accounts. All of that data that's in Eloqua Insight and pre-calculated like campaign ROI reports or anything, any report in Insight, you could programmatically pull that data out of Eloqua now directly using this new API. And the really nice thing about this API is you don't have to be a programmer. It uses a standard called OData, which is an open standard that's adopted by most analytics tools. It works with Tableau, it works with Power BI. You can even connect an Excel workbook directly to Eloqua. I'm using the OData standard. So that is great advancement there. And then SMS enhancements. We brought native SMS to Eloqua about 1.5 years ago now. We're continuing to enhance it to bring it kind of up to par with our consumer platform responses, which has had the mobile platform for many, many years. I'll go through these. I talked about the new user experience already.
We've covered that one. Yeah, we've covered that in quite a bit of detail, Steve, if you wanted to.
Perfect. So I can just skip past that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've talked about guided campaigns at all, but
no.
This is kind of a sped up version of creating a target account campaign where you start with what product am I selling, what audience am I selling it to, which email template I'm going to use, preview the template, and it will have dynamic content in it automatically chosen based upon the product and industry in the earlier steps. We'll do the same thing for a landing page. And then once you've walked through all of these kind of wizard steps, as the system is asking you these questions, you end up with a campaign that is targeted at a specific audience, that is probably a cross-sell or an upsell campaign where you're pushing a particular solution. And because of all the kind of metadata and whatnot in the system, the email's personalized, the landing page is personalized. You can do both email and advertising if you want to push an audience into, say, LinkedIn. And the end result is essentially a targeted account campaign that gets executed through Eloqua. There is actually a campaign canvas that gets built in the background behind this thing, but we're putting like a different veneer on top of it to kind of guide the user through the creation. The target account campaign is the first one we've built. We've also now done it for a multi-step nurture. We're building one for like a webinar invitation. We're going to add a bunch of different tactics over time, so that people don't have to interact with the canvas and figure stuff out for themselves. We can kind of walk them through the experience. I already talked about the reporting API, but lots of rich data you can get out of that. And then something else that's coming out soon, that if you haven't already heard about it, is our new webhook app. So the app extension framework in Eloqua has been very powerful for many years. There's hundreds of apps on the Oracle Cloud Marketplace, but they all have a specific purpose. It's the Zoom app, or it's the I don't know, LinkedIn
contact washing machine.
Contact washing machine,
yeah.
or the LinkedIn.
We love that one.
That's actually one of the most used. Contact washing machine, like the simple things like that. Hundreds, thousands of instances of Eloqua have it enabled. But even if I take the LinkedIn Campaign Manager app, I think there's something like 700 or 800 instances of different customers that are using the LinkedIn Campaign Manager app of Eloqua. Same with Facebook lead ads. Same with the WebEx one is incredibly popular. But what the webhook app does is it's kind of your generic. I think of it as like a get out of jail free card. It's like you can use it to connect into any external system that you work with within your marketing tech stack or your broader tech stack that accepts webhook type connections. And all a webhook really is, think of it kind of like a forum post, or like basically taking a bunch of data from Eloqua and you're pushing a payload somewhere. If you're familiar with platforms like Zapier, where they have all these what they call zaps to connect things back and forth together, that's essentially what's happening here. Anything that accepts like a form submission or kind of an endpoint for communication, which is hundreds and hundreds of these different apps, can now be communicated to and connected to into your Eloqua environment without having to have a really bespoke app for it.
For our clients on the line, we've Thomas on our support team. He and some of the crew have been working with the webhook app and also the Insight API as well. So if any clients are interested, because these are currently, they're not controlled availability just yet, are they, Stephen, or are they?
Reporting API is technically still in control, controlled availability, right? But we have 50 customers using it.
Right.
We cut it off, I think, at 50 just because we wanted to limit the feedback. I think it's going generally available in the next month or so, in the next quarter. And the webhook app, I believe we're going to maybe do a small kind of controlled availability too, but we want to get it generally available as soon as possible. I would assume by the end of the year.
Yeah, so if customers have any questions on either of those points, you could probably shoot an email through to support, and that would get directed to Thomas, who could probably be the best position at this stage to answer any questions. But we'll keep you up to date as these things become generally available, of course.
Yeah, it's exciting. And then the last thing, I'm hesitating here because this is about a 2-minute video. Let me just pause it for a moment and tee this up a little bit. So that's everything. That stuff has all been built, and it is really either in control availability or it's being, already in general availability. What we're working on internally, and won't be probably ready until middle of next year or so, is kind of the next generation of those guided campaigns that I was talking about. And this is where we're trying to take it one step further, where we're asking, not just walking a person through creating different types of campaigns, but also creating a higher level umbrella of, say, a marketing program where you have multiple campaigns that are all associated to the same goal. And all your campaigns have success criteria, and they basically have triggers that will pull contacts into the orchestration, and then success criteria to say whether that person did what you wanted them to do or not. And the goal of that is to be able to move more towards sensing and responding to customer behavior. If somebody does something on the website, I want to pull them in to this tactic, execute it, and then wait for the result, rather than having these complex linear campaigns on the canvas where it's a journey that you hope somebody goes through. So let me just, with that context, let me just let this run. And so you can see we're asking questions: what region, what product you want to sell, what regions you want to target, what industries you want to target. This is a very prescriptive process. And we're asking those questions in natural language, but the next step obviously is to move more into like a natural language processing, generative kind of focus. So in this case, based upon those inputs, the system is recommending 3 different tactics that are commonly used for ABM campaigns: a target account nurture, a webinar, and I actually forget what the third one is. I'll see in a moment. So I'm walking through the wizard here, and I'm saying, well, what content do I want to include in this campaign? It is dynamically selecting content that is relevant based upon the regions, the products, the industries that you selected. It's suggesting templates, email templates, and landing page templates that are also relevant to the content you selected. Because if you're doing an advertising campaign, an email template isn't relevant. And then it asks you, what would the success criteria for this target account email be? Is it simply that somebody clicks through to the landing page? Is it that they submit a form? What's the goal? Is the goal conversion? Is the goal reach? And then when that is all set up, you can publish it. And now you've got this, what we call tactic, configured and running as part of an human capital management. It's a product Oracle sells, a human capital management cross-sell program. So one of my tactics is this target account campaign, but I could also have a webinar promotion. I could also have a nurture. I can add in other tactics. And then what happens here is that all of these tactics are rolling up to the same goal, which is promoting or selling HCM. And they all have success criteria, so that if I look at it from an analytics perspective, I can see how well each of these tactics is performing based upon the success criteria. In this case, it was simply clicks. In this case, it's a webinar promotion, so the success criteria is registrations. And in this one, it's just a nurture series, so it's just views. But then that...
Interesting. I'm just looking, Steve. I'm just looking at who's on the call with us today, and I can see Phil is with us now. Phil has an organization, and they probably literally have thousands of SKUs, like just thousands of products. And then I look at a couple of other clients from higher education, so universities, etc.
Yeah.
And you could really see some interesting use cases for these types of scenarios. Now, there's going to obviously be a little bit of work in the back end to make all of this beautiful automation happen, but quite compelling.
It really comes down to the data. I mean, one of the things that we're really working with generative AI on is in NLP, kind of semantic analysis in general, is being able to understand the content that you have much, much better automatically, so that it's appropriately tagged, and that that this piece of content is talking about these topics, so that when you say, and also then modeling your account hierarchy and your product hierarchy. So that could be thousands of SKUs, or it could just be, different degree programs and, alumni and all that other stuff. And with that combination, with all that stuff modeled, the system can then can recommend, okay, well, we'll match people to products and content. That's the goal anyway. So this is a little more future facing, but trying to move beyond everything just being done on a canvas and being a little more intelligent.
Yeah, because I mean, Adrian, what are your thoughts? I mean, you look at that type of, also again, looking at who's with us on the call today, we've got people from professional services, accounting firms, financial services, etc. You compare that to the Phil's world with, literally thousands of SKUs, an accounting, professional services, they might have 6 or 7 key offerings,
Mm.
but
Yeah, look,
hopefully,
yeah. I think for some situations where I think fundamentally, if it's about speed and time is a major constraint, then you could say, look, I want to be able to do this quickly, and you'd be able to execute a campaign based on a set of criteria. I think underlyingly, there's still a level of complexity that's often around some of these things. So, your assumption is you have a student who knows what they want to study, and is only going to do maybe one application and only do one course. And, so I think you have to then, there's kind of reality gets in the way, and they go, okay, well, actually, there's probably more. It's not going to cater for, I guess it's not going to cater for all situations, but I think it's a way of getting something started. One of the questions I had, is whether or not you can then go in, and to what extent can you update or amend these scenarios that are being created?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the tactics are intended to be prescriptive, so by their nature, they're not going to be fit for every situation. What we're actually building, though, is the ability for a kind of more of an administrator, or like a marketing operations type of a person, to be able to essentially build out tactics, and put constraints in place. So what you may say, you may allow the user to select a success criteria, or you may enforce a particular success criteria. That kind of flexibility, kind of like locking down a template or not locking down a template. But yes, it is in its relatively early. We have some of this stuff working, but it's in its early days, so feedback is always welcome. And then I'll finish on the screen in the next one, and we can get more into conversation. But so this is a visualization at an account level, based upon all of these things that all the information that has been brought together. What we're trying to do is, as I mentioned up front with the sales and marketing unification, is stop. A lot of people are going to continue to want to focus on leads, and that's perfectly fine, because in some cases it's very appropriate. But we're also looking to being able to programmatically identifying when an opportunity is emerging on the marketing side. So kind of think of it as like a marketing qualified opportunity, or sort of like buying group identification. There's a number of different people from the same account are engaging in content, clicking through on content, or whatever the case might be, consuming stuff related to the same products or service. So that becomes an emerging opportunity, and we're working on how we can programmatically score that at an opportunity level, so across the account product kind of dimension, and then qualify on the marketing side the fact that there is this early stage conversation ready, as we call it, opportunity, and send that directly into Salesforce, send that directly into Sales Cloud at an opportunity level. Maybe it's pre-qualified, maybe it's like 20% or something, or 10% or something like that. But here's an opportunity. Here are the people that have engaged. Here's all the actions that they've taken. Here's the products and services. So it gives a lot of context to either maybe a BDR or SDR who's going to further qualify it, or if it goes directly to an account executive, they know why it was sent to them.
Yeah, because I was looking at the call here today. So we've got people on the line using Oracle NetSuite, Salesforce CRM, Microsoft Dynamics. Did I say Oracle Sales Cloud? Yeah. So, and probably a few others, I'm sure. So is the expectation from the get-go that this type of a construct would be able to talk to Dynamics and NetSuite and Sales Cloud and Salesforce?
I mean, they all, as you know, they all behave slightly differently and have a different structures. We know so obviously we've designed it to work very well with Sales Cloud, and we've actually evolved some screens in next gen sales that are specifically taking all of the data and all the activity from Eloqua, from marketing, and displaying it all in the opportunity view. But we have customers that are doing this with Salesforce as well, because the Salesforce integration is quite advanced and has been invested in a lot over the years, and we can interact with all those objects, custom objects, opportunity objects, and whatnot. The logic in the opportunity identification all happens on the Eloqua side. So it's really an extension of how you integrate to Salesforce or Sales Cloud through our app-based integrations that does it. I haven't, to be perfectly transparent, I haven't looked at Dynamics yet. We're trying to make this kind of CRM agnostic.
Okay. And that would be the same goal then with NetSuite, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, NetSuite internally at Oracle uses Eloqua for marketing.
Right. So they'll be pushing you.
Yeah. They will. Yeah, then the last one is just an example of where we've been experimenting with generative AI, where we've got like a template and you can provide a bunch of tags, like here's a bunch of regions, here's a bunch of industries, here's a bunch of products. Those become prompts so Oracle has a relationship with a company called Cohere, which is like a large enterprise class large language model like OpenAI, except it's designed for enterprises, and it's run as a service on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So you push this information in as a prompt, and the system then generates back iterations or versions of that template based upon the inputs that it was given, because it understands it's been trained on Oracle products, Oracle customers, Oracle references. So we can dynamically generate pulling quotes, pulling stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And again, people are going to perhaps be a little worried about I'm not just going to let this go off and do this thing unsupervised, but it can certainly help accelerate the creation process by providing a lot of straw men.
Thank you. I've just dropped into the chat there for everybody a link to a blog post we did just recently following CloudWorld, and some additional information there about Cohere as well. So if you're interested in having a look, there's a quick video on there as well, actually, talking about generative AI. But I've been watching the Q&A, and we're either doing a good job of answering questions or people are not asking questions. It's one of the two. So we'll leave that there at the minute. Adrian and Sean, and Stephen, if you can just keep an eye on that. I'll just quickly jump back to our deck just to wrap up with a couple of other things, but we will definitely come back and finish off if there's any other questions from people. So that's our cloud world. We've done our roadmap, and emphasis on any more questions. So please, if you do, let's have a look at that. So as I mentioned earlier in the session today, we don't have specific details just yet for 23D. We certainly can expect Redwood design experience to be rolled out to further areas of the platform, as has been committed. So it started, I think, with 23B this year. I think it was the first part of the year. But we do have dates. So for those clients who kind of keep an eye on these things, the local pod for the Australian clients, or not all but many, is pod 7. So it's early November. These are US. No, actually, they published that in Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So that's correct. For many other clients, you're on pod 1. So again, it's kind of that weekend, which will be the Saturday for us for pod 1 here in Australia. Any questions or any final thoughts, maybe Adrian, from you, just to kind of wrap up or summarize? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I really love the idea of kind of sales and marketing unification. I think once you get to understanding sales opportunities and then even contacts and their roles in those opportunities, there's such a large amount of information that marketing could help in that sales process. So that kind of idea of wedding those two things together, I think, is really cool. What about kind of sort of thinking through later in the customer lifecycle, though, things like onboarding or even advocacy and loyalty and promoting those sorts of things? Is that something that you kind of also taking into account in terms of that kind of orchestrating those guided campaigns? Because I would
Yeah,
have thought it would be
absolutely.
kind of easier in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we started with the hard part, which is the growth, I suppose. No, we were definitely thinking across the customer life cycle. I went by it very quickly at the beginning, but there was like a Venn diagram of marketing and sales, but it also had customer success so you could probably add service in there, but we believe and we've heard from analysts and a lot of our customers that for many industries, a lot of the growth is going to come from your existing customers. A lot of growth is going to come from cross-sell and upsell into your install base. A lot of marketing programs and a lot of CRMs, for that matter, are kind of treat acquisition and sort of like cross-sell, upsell, and loyalty and customer nurtures very similarly, which they are kind of pretty different motions because you know a lot about your existing customers. So that's where guided campaigns and kind of the target account campaigns are really focused on that first party data that you should have and need to bring together to do a better job of being relevant to your install base. So I think loyalty is key. You generate loyalty through trust and being relevant, and you generate those things by knowing your customers really well.
I think we're still sort of dependent a little bit on sales or service to input that information so that we can then digest it properly and tailor things accordingly. But yeah,
there's a lot of attempts through like automatic transcription and services like Gong and Clary and things that are trying to take all that information and put it into the CRM automatically.
It just sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a nice comment here from Rima, one of our clients in Melbourne. Fantastic presentation, Stephen. So many golden nuggets to take away from this. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that, Rima. Thank you.
Well, happy to stay on the line. We've got a couple of minutes up our sleeve, like literally 4 minutes. If you were an American, Stephen, I'd be saying that hopefully there's some pumpkin pie waiting for you. But if I'm in Canada, what would be the equivalent of said pumpkin pie?
Actually, I could make a joke and say it's like maple syrup or something, but but I mean, pumpkin pie is traditional here too.
Right. It's a universal North American thing, huh?
Universal. Thanksgiving is, I think, the busiest travel time in the US and probably almost a bigger holiday than Christmas. It's not quite the same level in Canada, but it's still celebrated. But like Australia and in general, I guess New Zealand as well, and certainly places like Singapore, Canada is extremely multicultural. Like I live in Toronto, and there's probably like 250 different first languages spoken here, and very large communities across every culture. So while Thanksgiving is celebrated, it's certainly not celebrated by all.
Right.
And you can you'll find a wide variety of things on people's tables.
Lots of gorgeous cuisines to choose from. Well, if there's apple pie, if there's pumpkin pie waiting for you, we should maybe let you go and grab that. But thank you again for making some time to be with us, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thanks, Adrian, for your input, and Sean. And thanks, everybody, for attending. And just a heads up, next month, Derek will be coming to you live from Berlin. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So completely random location, but still the same time for you, but it won't be for me, I promise you. Thanks, everybody, and have a great evening.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye-bye.